so hard. You have made me sick. You got my family crying. I miss my sister every day. Don't do it.
There are moments in a courtroom when the rules, the walls, the authority, the uniforms, none of it matters. Moments where the weight of grief becomes so crushing, it bursts through every barrier the system tries to keep in place. Moments where the human heart, overwhelmed and breaking, lashes out against the person it believes stole everything. And in these moments, the courtroom is no longer a place for justice. It becomes a battlefield of pain, rage, and consequence. Today, we explore 3 cases where the courtroom didn't just hear the truth, it felt the explosion of it. Cases where the families of victims couldn't sit still, where the violence of a crime resurfaced inside the courthouse, and where the accused, some calm, some smiling, some expressionless, faced a justice far more personal and raw than anything written in law. This is the world behind the courtroom cameras. And these are the cases of Lindy Jones, VASHON Flowers, and PEYTON GENDRON. Lindy Jones. There's a particular kind of silence that hits a courtroom right before a grieving parent speaks. The kind where you can hear every breath, every shift of a chair, every tight exhale from the person standing behind the podium. It's a silence full of years. Years of love, years of memory, and now, years stolen. That's the silence that hung in the air as the parents of 18-year-old Willie Fields Jr. stood before the judge in Orangeburg County, South Carolina. Their son had been murdered, shot repeatedly outside their home on Rosewood Drive in August 2019. Prosecutors said 2 brothers were responsible, Jalen, a juvenile at the time, and Lindy Jones, who was 19. Jalen eventually pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact and received 6 years in a juvenile facility. Lindy, however, was the one accused of pulling the trigger. By the time he entered the courtroom for sentencing, Lindy Jones had already pleaded guilty to murder and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. The facts were not in dispute anymore. The only thing left was the human impact, what this murder did to the family he now faced only a few feet away. Her voice trembled as she said,
What they took from me. They took away my only child.
"Your Honor, I just want to let you know this is what they took from me. They took away my only child." Her pain filled the room, pouring out in waves so heavy the gallery behind her fell silent. This wasn't a speech prepared by attorneys. It wasn't polished, it wasn't orderly. It was raw humanity, cut open. Beside her stood Willie's father, Willie Fields Sr., trying to stay composed, until suddenly he couldn't, because nothing in his body, nothing in his heart, nothing in his soul could sit still while the man who killed his son stood only feet away. And so, in the space of a heartbeat, grief transformed into action. He lunged. The courtroom gasped as Fields Sr. charged across the floor, clearing the distance between himself and Lindy Jones in seconds. Deputies tried to move, but the father was faster, driven not by violence, but by pain. He threw a punch so forceful it knocked Lindy Jones off his feet. The defendant collapsed, folding into the impact. And even as deputies rushed forward, Fields Sr. continued swinging, every strike fueled not by hatred, but by what had been stolen from him forever. The courtroom erupted, shouting, chairs scraping, deputies yelling commands. It became chaos, pure, unfiltered chaos. Officers pulled the father away, wrestling him back while Lindy tried weakly to stand. Another lunge, another attempt to fight back, and deputies forced him down again. The pain of one family had collided with the violence of one crime, and for a moment, the courtroom wasn't a courtroom. It was ground zero for heartbreak. Fields Sr. was taken into custody and later faced assault and battery charges. But in that moment, none of that mattered. The system could punish him, but it could never punish him more than losing his only son already had. And when the room finally calmed, the judge delivered Lindy Jones' sentence: 35 years in prison, 35 years for a life taken, 35 years for the pain rippling through the courtroom. But the moment everyone remembered wasn't the sentence. It was a father's scream for justice, echoing louder than any judge ever could. VASHON Flowers, Sometimes the violence that erupts in a courtroom doesn't come from a parent. It comes from a child who watched his whole world collapse in a single, horrifying moment. In Muskegon County, Michigan, VASHON Flowers sat in court with a blank expression. He had been charged with open murder after shooting and killing his wife, Jaime Flowers, at their home in May 2019. The story was both chilling and heartbreaking. According to testimony, an argument over something as small as cigarettes spiraled into a day-long fight. Police had been called once already and separated the couple. But hours later, VASHON returned, kicked in the door, and shot Jaime 4 times. Her daughter Paris witnessed everything, and when she took the stand, the courtroom heard the last words Jaime ever spoke. "You don't have to do this. Please don't do this." In one sentence, a mother begged for her life. In the next moment, she lost it. But while Paris's testimony broke the courtroom emotionally, it was Jaime's son, 21-year-old London Jones, who broke it physically. During a routine hearing, the courtroom seemed calm. Attorneys shuffled papers. Deputies stood in their usual positions. VASHON sat at the defense table, expression unreadable, almost detached from the reality unfolding around him. But behind the railing, London Jones sat shaking, his jaw clenched, his eyes locked on the man who took his mother from him. And then, in one explosive second, he made his decision. London launched himself over the wooden barrier, clearing it like it wasn't even there. The room erupted as he sprinted straight toward Flowers with a fury that had been building for months. Chairs slammed back. People screamed. Deputies lunged forward. London reached VASHON's table, ready to deliver the justice his heart craved, when deputies tackled him, dragging him back before he could land the blow he so desperately wanted to give. The courtroom became a storm. Shouts, commands, shoes scraping the floor. London fought through the deputies, trying to climb back toward Flowers even as they restrained him. But eventually, overwhelmed by the officers, he was pulled out of the room, kicking, yelling, crying. It didn't matter that he'd be escorted out. It didn't matter what consequences he would face later. In that moment, the only thing that mattered to him was defending the memory of his mother. As London was removed, the judge continued the proceedings, but the haunting image that stayed with those present wasn't the sentencing. It wasn't the judge's words or the scroll of legal charges. It was the cry of a son who had seen too much tragedy for his age and tried to fight the man who caused it.
You have made me sick. You got my family crying. I miss my sister every day. Don't do it!
PEYTON GENDRON. There are crimes that shake a family, crimes that shake a community, and then there are crimes that shake an entire nation. On May 14th, 2022, PEYTON GENDRON, an 18-year-old white supremacist, drove over 200 miles to a supermarket in Buffalo, New York, with one mission: to kill as many black people as possible. He live-streamed part of the massacre online. 10 innocent lives were stolen. 3 more were wounded. Families were shattered forever. The country watched in horror as the details unfolded. GENDRON's racist writings, his months of planning, his weapons covered in hateful slurs. When police arrived, he surrendered without a fight, as if his mission had been nothing more than an errand. But when he entered the courtroom, everything changed. The families of the victims came forward one by one, their voices trembling with rage, grief, and disbelief. One woman told him he would go from a name to a number, forgotten by the world he tried to terrorize. Another said she wished he would remain alive just long enough to suffer with the weight of what he'd done. But one family member, holding the pain of a community in his chest, didn't want to speak. He wanted vengeance. As a woman addressed GENDRON directly, condemning him for destroying lives, the man standing beside her suddenly burst forward, overwhelmed, uncontrolled. He surged across the courtroom, aiming straight for GENDRON with a fury that looked unstoppable. The room erupted. Deputies tackled him mid-charge, dragging him back as he screamed at the killer. Families cried. Officers fought to regain control. For a moment, the courtroom was no longer a place of law. It was the epicenter of a pain too large to contain. When order finally returned, GENDRON was given the chance to speak, and in a low, shaken voice, he apologized, saying he had acted out of hate. But for many families, the apology felt hollow. Too late, too small compared to the enormity of the devastation he caused. There can be no mercy for you, she said. No understanding, no second chances. The final chapter was sealed. Life in prison without parole. Forever. Three cases, three courtrooms, three eruptions of human emotion that broke through the boundaries of the justice system. A father who couldn't stay still while the man who killed his only son stood before him. A son who couldn't breathe knowing his mother's killer sat only feet away. A community member who could no longer hold the weight of a massacre. Justice here wasn't just about laws or verdicts. It was about grief, about anger, about the rawest form of humanity, the part of us that refuses to stay silent when everything we love is taken. In every courtroom, the judge delivers the sentence. But in these moments, the families delivered something else, the unfiltered truth of what violence leaves behind. And that's something no sentencing document will ever fully capture.